The entire village laughed at her. They called her worthless. A nobody. But what they didn't know was that someone had been watching her all along. And when he finally revealed who he really was, their laughter would turn to shock. 500 naira for 3 plantains. Regina's voice cut through the Ife market like a knife. Not like that orphan girl who practically gives hers away. No wonder she'll always be poor. The laughter that followed stung, but 23-year-old Miriam kept her eyes on her work. 5 years of mockery had taught her that their words couldn't change who she was. While Regina occupied the premium spot with her colorful umbrella and cushioned stool, Miriam made do with a corner where the sun hit hardest. While others gossiped about whose husband was cheating or which pastor drove the newest car, she arrived before dawn to roast each plantain to golden perfection. The market was her classroom. She'd learned to read people, which customers would haggle endlessly, which ones appreciated honesty, which ones were just killing time. She'd learned that a genuine smile cost nothing but could brighten someone's difficult day. "Good afternoon, sister." A young man approached her cart, pulling her attention from Regina's mockery. Miriam straightened immediately, her tired face brightening with warmth. "How many would you like today?" She wrapped 3 plantains in old newspaper with practiced efficiency, added groundnuts, and calculated the total mentally. She counted out his change carefully, placing each coin deliberately in his palm. Every kobo. He stared at the money, clearly surprised. Most traders would have pocketed the extra 20 naira without blinking. "You gave me too much," he said, confusion crossing his face. "No sir, that's the correct change. I don't shortchange my customers." He walked away shaking his head, and Patricia's sharp laugh rang out behind Miriam. "Why do you do that?" Patricia's voice dripped with contempt as she sauntered closer, her perfume overwhelming. "You're too honest for your own good. That's why you're still wearing clothes from 5 years ago. Look at you, same dress, same poverty. When will you learn?" Susan joined her, adjusting her expensive head tie. "Some people are just born to struggle. It's their destiny." Miriam didn't respond. She'd learned that engaging only fed their cruelty. Instead, she pulled out her worn notebook and recorded the transaction. At night by candlelight in the cramped room Mrs. Gladys grudgingly provided, she would count her savings hidden in an old tin. 100 naira here, 200 there. Building towards something impossible. University. Education. A different life. The car accident that killed her parents 5 years ago had stolen more than just family. It had stolen her future, her home, her sense of belonging. Mrs. Gladys had taken her in, not from love, but from grudging obligation to her dead sister. And she never let Miriam forget the burden. "You're late for dinner preparation." Joy appeared suddenly, her well-fed face twisted in irritation. Unlike Miriam's thin frame, Joy had the comfortable roundness of someone who never went hungry. "Mother says you need to come home now and stop wasting time with this stupid business. We have guests tonight, and you need to cook." "I'll be there soon," Miriam said quietly, beginning to pack her remaining plantains. "Soon isn't good enough. Now means now." Joy's voice rose, attracting attention. Before Miriam could respond, movement on the market road made everyone freeze mid-sentence. A convoy of black SUVs moved slowly through the crowd, forcing traders and customers to part. The vehicles were sleek, expensive, completely out of place in their dusty market where most people arrived on foot or by Okada. Regina gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Patricia grabbed Susan's arm, nearly pulling her off balance. Even Joy stopped mid-complaint. The entire market held its breath. The first SUV passed, then the second, then the third. Behind tinted windows, Miriam caught a glimpse of a distinguished figure, silver hair catching the fading sunlight. Then the whispers started, spreading like wildfire. "He's back. Gabriel Adeyemi is back. The billionaire has come home." The name Gabriel Adeyemi rippled through Ife like electricity through copper wire. Within hours, the entire village knew every detail. The boy who left 30 years ago as a nobody had returned as a billionaire. He was building a factory that would employ hundreds. He was looking for business partners. He was going to transform Ife into something modern, something prosperous. By nightfall, the rumors had multiplied. Some said he'd made his fortune in oil. Others insisted it was technology. A few whispered about international connections, houses in London and New York, a net worth that rivaled state governors. Regina appeared at the market the next day transformed. Her dress was new, clearly from an expensive Lagos boutique where prices made ordinary people gasp. The fabric shimmered like fish scales, and her makeup was professionally done. She'd taken a trip to one of the expensive salons, the kind that charged what Miriam earned in a week. "I heard he's looking for sophisticated women to help run his hospitality division," she announced loudly, making sure her voice carried. She adjusted her designer compact so everyone could see the label. Someone with class and presentation. Someone who understands elegance. She glanced meaningfully at Miriam's worn dress and smiled cruelly. Not everyone can meet such standards, of course. Some people are meant to stay exactly where they are. Patricia and Susan had also transformed overnight. Patricia wore a new Brazilian weave that cascaded down her back, and Susan's outfit was clearly imported, the kind you saw in fashion magazines. They practiced walking with exaggerated hip movements, their voices taking on affected tones. The market had become a stage, a theater where everyone performed for an audience of one. The billionaire who might notice them, who might select them, who might change their lives with a single glance. Chief Benson called a mandatory town hall meeting at the community center. The announcement came with drums beating as the town crier moved through the streets. Gabriel Adeyemi returns home. All must come. All must welcome our son who has made us proud. Mrs. Gladys spent the entire afternoon getting ready. She squeezed into her best ankara and forced Joy to help tie her geli into an elaborate shape that added 6 inches to her height. Miriam watched from the corner of their cramped living room, folding laundry. The house was a flurry of activity. Joy running back and forth with jewelry, Mrs. Gladys barking orders, neighbors stopping by to borrow makeup. "You're not coming," Mrs. Gladys said flatly, not even looking at Miriam as she applied bright red lipstick. "You'll embarrass this family. Look at you, you have nothing decent to wear, and everyone knows you're just the orphan we took in out of charity. What would people think?" Joy smirked. "Besides, someone needs to stay home and prepare dinner for when we return. We'll be hungry after meeting Mr. Adeyemi. I heard he might even shake hands with people." As the sun set, Miriam stood at the window watching the entire village stream toward the community center. Women in finest wrappers, blues and greens and golds. Men in flowing agbada embroidered with gold thread. Young people with freshly braided hair and polished shoes. Music and celebration drifted on the evening air. She turned away and began chopping vegetables for a dinner she would cook for people who would return full of stories, who would eat without thanking her, who would treat her service as obligation rather than gift. But her mind wandered. What would it be like to have opportunities? To be seen as valuable? To walk into a room and have people see potential instead of poverty? Hours later, Mrs. Gladys and Joy returned, glowing with excitement. "He's even more impressive than the rumors," Mrs. Gladys gushed, collapsing onto the worn sofa. "Tall, distinguished, well-spoken, the kind of English that sounds like BBC News. And the way he carries himself. You can tell he's used to money, used to power. And he's starting a selection process, looking for young entrepreneurs to mentor." Joy bounced excitedly. "He's going to choose people from the village to invest in. Real money, mother. Life-changing amounts." Her eyes gleamed as she looked at Miriam by the stove. "Joy will apply. This is our chance. Our ticket to everything we deserve." She pointed at Miriam, her voice cold. "Not yours. Ours. Know your place, girl." The morning after the town hall meeting, Miriam returned to her usual spot in the market, arriving as always before the sun fully rose. The other traders were still buzzing about Gabriel Adeyemi, about his expensive suit that probably cost more than most people earned in a year, about his confident manner that commanded attention, about his promises of transformation that had everyone dreaming of escape from poverty's cycle. "Did you see his watch?" Patricia was saying to a gathered group. "That was a Rolex. My cousin in Lagos knows about these things. That watch alone could buy 3 houses in this village." "And his shoes," Susan added, examining her reflection. "Italian leather. I recognized the brand. The man knows quality." Miriam arranged her plantains with care, checking each one, discarding any imperfect ones. She'd been up since 4, roasting them over her small charcoal stove, ensuring each had that perfect golden color her regular customers expected. "Roasted plantain, please." The voice was gentle, unhurried, cutting through the excited chatter. Miriam looked up to see an elderly man standing before her cart. He wore simple clothes, a shirt washed so many times the blue had faded to something softer, and plain trousers with a small patch on one knee, neatly sewn. No jewelry. No designer labels. Nothing suggesting wealth. His face was kind, deeply weathered by time, with eyes that seemed to see more than most people. He was alone, which was unusual. Most people moved in groups, in pairs, in families. But this man stood quietly, waiting with courtesy that was becoming rare. "Yes, sir, how many would you like?" Miriam began wrapping golden plantains in old newspaper. 3, and some groundnuts, please." He watched her work with genuine interest. "You're very precise with your portions. Not everyone takes such care anymore." "It's the right thing to do, sir. People work hard for their money. They deserve honesty." She handed him the package and counted his change carefully, coin by coin. The man didn't leave immediately. Instead, he leaned against a nearby wall and began eating slowly, savoring each bite. "These are very good," he observed. "The best I've had in a very long time. You have a gift." Miriam felt her cheeks warm at the unexpected compliment. "Thank you, sir. I try to do my best." "You weren't at the meeting last night," he said after a moment. She was surprised he'd noticed. "No, sir. I had responsibilities at home. But I heard it was quite an event." "Indeed it was. Everyone is very excited about Mr. Adeyemi's return." He studied her thoughtfully. "Tell me, what do you think about it? About his plans?" She considered carefully, watching young people walk past in their finest clothes, still discussing the billionaire's promises. "I think it's good that he wants to help people. Any opportunity for growth is valuable. But I also think real change comes from within. Money can open doors, but it's what you do with the opportunity that matters. It's about character, about work ethic, about staying true to your values even when you have resources." He smiled, a curious light in his eyes. "Wise words for someone so young. Your parents taught you well." "They did, sir. Before they passed." A shadow crossed her face, but she pushed it away. "They taught me that integrity matters more than wealth, that kindness costs nothing, and that hard work honors God." "And what would you do with such an opportunity?" he asked gently. "If Mr. Adeyemi's program gave you a chance?" "I'd go to university," Miriam said quietly, hope entering her voice. "Not just for myself, but to learn how to create something sustainable. A restaurant that could employ others struggling like me. Where people could find not just food, but dignity in their work. Where young people from difficult backgrounds could learn skills and build futures." The old man leaned forward, clearly interested. "Tell me more about this vision." And so Miriam found herself talking, really talking, for the first time in years. She spoke about fair wages, about training programs, about creating a place where excellence met compassion, about using local ingredients to support other farmers, about a restaurant known not just for food, but for its heart. They talked for nearly an hour, about life, about dreams, about the difference between surviving and living. He asked thoughtful questions and listened more than he spoke, nodding occasionally, his eyes never leaving her face. When he finally left, He pressed payment into her hand. Your parents would be very proud of the woman you've become. Miriam watched him disappear into the market crowd, feeling strangely lighter. She didn't realize she'd just had a conversation that would change her life. And she certainly didn't know that the simple old man in worn clothes was Gabriel Adeyemi himself. 3 days later, the announcement came, posted on the community center notice board and announced through the town crier. Gabriel Adeyemi was accepting applications for his entrepreneur mentorship program. The successful candidate would receive substantial funding, comprehensive business training, and personal mentorship from the billionaire himself. The deadline was 1 week. The entire village descended into organized chaos. Regina paid a Lagos consultant 5,000 naira to write her proposal. Money she borrowed with promises to repay double once she won. The consultant delivered a 40-page document filled with business jargon that sounded impressive even if Regina didn't understand half of it. Words like synergy and market penetration filled pages alongside impressive charts. Patricia's application was a glossy document with professionally taken photos. She'd hired a photographer, spent hours getting hair and makeup done, and the resulting images showed her in various business poses against carefully chosen backgrounds suggesting success. Susan spent 2 days at an internet cafe crafting what she believed was an irresistible business plan for a luxury boutique. She researched terminology online, copying phrases without fully understanding them, peppering her proposal with keywords she'd seen in articles about successful entrepreneurs. At Mrs. Gladys's house, the atmosphere was electric. Joy had commandeered the only table, spreading papers like a general planning war. She'd enlisted 2 educated friends to help write her proposal, paying them with promises of future rewards. "Mother, I need new clothes for when interviews happen," Joy demanded. "Everyone will be dressed well. I can't look ordinary. First impressions matter tremendously." Mrs. Gladys reached into the household money jar, money that included Miriam's weekly contributions, and handed Joy 2,000 naira. "Buy something impressive. Something that says, 'Successful businesswoman.' This is our ticket to a better life." Miriam, washing dishes in the corner, said nothing. She'd learned objecting only brought trouble. That night, after everyone slept, after Joy's snoring filled their shared room and Mrs. Gladys's heavy breathing echoed from the other room, Miriam sat on the cold kitchen floor by candlelight. Her hands trembled as she pulled out paper she'd bought with her own money, savings hidden coin by coin. She'd been thinking constantly about the old man's question. What would you do with the opportunity? The question had burrowed into her heart, planted a seed she couldn't ignore. She began writing in her careful, neat handwriting, the precise penmanship her father had insisted she practice. "Education is power," he used to say, "but only if you can communicate clearly." Her proposal wasn't fancy, no computer, no consultant, no glossy photos. But it was honest. It was hers. She outlined a simple plan: expand her cart into a small restaurant specializing in affordable, quality meals. She included specific details: rental costs, equipment needed, menu items, pricing strategies that would keep food accessible while maintaining profit margins. More importantly, she would hire young people from difficult backgrounds and train them completely. Not just cooking, but customer service, money management, basic business principles. She would create not just employees but entrepreneurs in training. She included her financial records, every transaction meticulously recorded over the past year. The numbers told a story of discipline, consistency, someone who understood the value of every naira. She wrote about efficiency, sustainability, community impact, about creating systems that would last, about how helping one person created ripples touching families, neighborhoods, eventually society. The candle burned low as she worked, wax pooling on the cracked floor, shadows dancing on walls. Her hand cramped from writing, but she pressed on, pouring 5 years of dreams onto paper. At dawn, while the village still slept and roosters were just beginning their calls, she walked to the community center through empty streets. Her heart pounded with every step. If Mrs. Gladys found out, there would be severe consequences: screaming, accusations, possibly being thrown out entirely. Brother Samuel, the kind security guard, was just arriving, unlocking the gates as the sun painted the sky pink. He smiled at her warmly. "Early morning, Sister Miriam." "Good morning, Brother Samuel." Her voice was barely a whisper as she slipped her application into the submission box, hands shaking. He watched with understanding eyes. "May God bless your efforts, my daughter," he said gently, and something in his tone suggested he understood more than he said. As Miriam walked back to set up her cart, the morning sun rising higher and painting the sky brilliant shades of pink and gold, she felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. Real, tangible hope that felt like a fragile bird taking flight in her chest. And somewhere across town in a hotel room, Gabriel Adeyemi sat at a desk, sorting through early applications. When he reached one written in simple handwriting on plain paper with no fancy formatting, he paused. His finger traced the neat letters. Then, slowly, he smiled. The community center buzzed with controlled chaos as Gabriel Adeyemi's team transformed it into a proper interview facility. His executive assistant Linda, sharp in her tailored suit, arranged files with military precision. Every paper had its place, every schedule item color-coded, every detail attended to with efficiency from years managing a billionaire's complex affairs. His nephew David paced the room like a restless cat, scrolling through his phone with barely concealed impatience. He was young, dressed in expensive casual wear that screamed Lego sophistication, clothes that looked simple but cost a fortune. Everything about him suggested someone who'd rather be anywhere else. "Uncle, are you absolutely sure about this village investment?" David asked for what must have been the 10th time. "I've reviewed most applications, and half are clearly written by someone else. The language is too polished, too professional. The other half show no real business acumen. We're wasting time. We could be in Lagos meeting with real entrepreneurs." Gabriel looked up from papers, reading glasses perched on his nose. "Patience, David. We're not just looking at what's written on paper. We're looking at what's real. Sometimes the most impressive proposal hides the least impressive character." "But Uncle." "David." Gabriel's voice was gentle but firm, stopping his nephew mid-sentence. "Trust the process." That afternoon, Gabriel returned to the market in his simple disguise. The same worn shirt, the same plain trousers, the same humble manner that made him invisible to people scanning for wealth and status. He'd been doing this daily since his arrival, a deliberate strategy to observe the village naturally, to see how people behaved when they thought no one important was watching. The other traders barely noticed him. Regina walked past twice without a glance. Patricia nearly bumped into him while showing off her new outfit, muttering an irritated "excuse me" without seeing him. Susan actually asked him to move aside when he stood in front of a stall she wanted to access. But Miriam always greeted him warmly. "Good afternoon, sir," she smiled as he approached, already reaching for newspaper and plantains. Her smile was genuine, reaching her eyes in a way suggesting kindness was her default, not a performance. "How are you today?" "Better now that I'm here," he replied honestly, settling into their easy conversation. He'd come to look forward to these moments, these brief windows into authentic humanity. "Tell me, Miriam, what does success truly mean to you?" She paused in her wrapping, considering carefully. "Success isn't about having the most money or the finest things, sir. It's about being able to sleep at night knowing you've been honest in all your dealings. It's about lifting others as you climb, not stepping on them to get higher. My parents taught me that before they died. My father used to say, 'Miriam, if you gain the whole world but lose yourself in the process, what have you really gained?' Your father was a wise man." "He was, sir. Both my parents were. They didn't have much materially. We were never rich. But they had integrity that couldn't be bought or sold. They had character that remained constant whether people were watching or not. And they taught me those things are worth more than gold. And if you had wealth, real wealth, the kind that changes everything, what would you change about your life?" "I wouldn't change who I am," Miriam said firmly, conviction in her voice. "I'd change what I could do. I'd still work hard because work gives meaning. I'd still be honest because dishonesty corrupts the soul. I'd still give exact change and treat every customer with respect. But I'd have the resources to help others do the same, to create opportunities instead of just wishing for them. Nearby, Regina strutted past in her expensive new outfit, heels clicking loudly, deliberately ignoring the old man but making sure everyone saw her designer handbag, the new one bought specifically to impress Mr. Adeyemi's team. Patricia and Susan followed like ladies in waiting, practicing their sophisticated walks, voices loud enough to ensure everyone heard them discussing business strategies they barely understood. They were heading to the community center, hoping to catch Mr. Adeyemi's attention during interview preparations, perhaps get an early advantage by showing commitment. Gabriel watched them go, noting the performance, the artifice, the desperation masked as confidence. Then he turned back to Miriam, who had shifted attention to serving a young mother with a small child clinging to her wrapper. "That's 1 naira short, Ma," Miriam was saying gently, no judgment in her voice. The young mother's face fell. "Oh, sister, please. My husband hasn't sent money this week, and my children haven't eaten since yesterday morning. Can you just—" Miriam didn't let her finish. Without hesitation, without making a show of it, she added an extra plantain to the package. "Here, take this for the child. You can pay me next week when your husband sends money. Or whenever you're able." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "God bless you, sister. God will reward your kindness." After the woman left, clutching the package like treasure, Gabriel asked quietly, "Will she pay you back?" Miriam shrugged philosophically. "I don't know. Maybe she will, maybe she won't. Life is hard for many people. But that child was hungry, clearly hungry, and I had food I could spare. What else was I supposed to do? Let that baby go hungry when I had the power to help?" Gabriel smiled genuinely and made another note in his worn pocketbook. Character is revealed in how we treat people when there's absolutely nothing to gain from it. Miriam nodded, not knowing that this simple wisdom was being tested throughout the entire village at this very moment. Not knowing that every interaction was being observed by hidden cameras, every choice noted and recorded, every moment of truth captured. Not knowing that the selection process had already begun, that the real interview wasn't in the community center but here, in the market, in daily decisions that revealed character more clearly than any rehearsed response. And that very soon, the test results would be announced. What she also didn't know was that the old man taking notes in his worn pocketbook was recording everything. Not just her words, but the authenticity behind them, the consistency between what she said and what she did. The shortlist appeared on the community center notice board on a humid Tuesday morning when the air was thick and heavy. A crowd gathered immediately, pushing and jostling to see the names, everyone desperate to know if their dreams had made the cut. Regina, Patricia, and Susan stood near the front, shoulders back, supremely confident. Joy clutched her mother's arm, nervous but hopeful. "Regina O'Layton." Someone read out loud, and Regina squealed with delight. "Patricia Adamu." Patricia punched the air triumphantly. "Susan Balagan." Susan smiled smugly, already planning her interview outfit. "Joy Ojo." Mrs. Gladys grabbed her daughter's shoulders, shaking with excitement. Then someone gasped, loud enough to silence the murmuring crowd. "Miriam Adelana, the orphan girl. This must be a mistake. Someone check again." The shock rippled through the assembled villagers like a stone thrown into still water. People pressed forward to look for themselves, certain there must be an error. But there it was, written clearly. Miriam Adelana. Miriam was at the market when she heard the news from Mom and Ketchy, the elderly vegetable seller who'd always been kind despite arthritis making every movement painful. "You made the list, my daughter," Mom and Ketchy said with genuine warmth, her wrinkled face breaking into a wide smile. "I just came from the center. They're all shocked, but I'm not. I've watched you for 5 years. You have something they don't. Character. God is good." "Thank you, Ma," Miriam whispered, hands trembling as she processed the news. She'd hoped, but hope and reality were different things. But not everyone shared Mom and Ketchy's joy. By midday, as the sun beat down mercilessly, the rumors had started, spreading through the village like wildfire. "She must have bribed someone on the selection committee," Patricia declared loudly, making sure her voice carried to Miriam's cot. "How else would someone like her qualify? Look at her education, her background, her everything. It's impossible unless money changed hands." "I heard she cheated," Susan added, examining her manicured nails with affected casualness. "Probably copied someone else's proposal word for word. She barely finished secondary school. What does she know about writing business plans? Someone obviously helped her." Regina's jealousy took an even sharper form, her voice dripping with venom. "Maybe she has other ways of convincing people. You know how some girls operate. She probably flirted with whoever was screening applications. Why else would they pick a nobody in rags over people with real credentials?" The whispers spread like disease, infecting every conversation. People who'd barely noticed Miriam before suddenly had strong opinions about her character, her intelligence, her worthiness. The cruelest blow came that evening. Mrs. Gladys stormed into the house like a hurricane, face twisted with rage so intense it made her ugly. "You applied? You applied?" She grabbed Miriam's arm, nails digging in like claws. "After I specifically told you this was for Joy, for this family. How dare you go behind my back? How dare you embarrass us like this?" "I just wanted a chance, Aunt," Miriam said quietly, trying to pull her arm free. "The application was open to everyone. I just wanted the same chance Joy had." "You have no right to chances." Mrs. Gladys spat, her face inches from Miriam's, breath hot and angry. "You're a burden, not family. We took you in out of charity when you had nowhere else to go. You eat our food, sleep under our roof, and this is how you repay us? By competing with Joy? By making us look bad in front of everyone?" Joy stood in the doorway, tears streaming, not from sadness but from anger and wounded pride. "Everyone was laughing at me, Mother," whispering behind their hands. "They're saying I lost to her, to an orphan. Do you know how humiliating that is?" "If you go to that interview," Mrs. Gladys said coldly, releasing Miriam's arm with a push, "don't bother coming back to this house. You'll be on your own. Completely alone. Is that what you want?" The next day, as Miriam walked through the village square, Mrs. Beatrix stopped her deliberately, publicly. She was Chief Benson's wife, a large woman who wore her husband's position like a crown, looking down on everyone from her imagined throne. Loud enough for everyone gathered to hear, women selling vegetables, men playing drafts, children running between stalls, she said with theatrical disgust, "I wonder what you really did to get on that list. Girls like you always have ways of getting what they want, don't they? We all know what you must have done." The crowd went silent, every conversation stopping, everyone turning to watch, waiting for Miriam's response, hungry for drama. Miriam felt her face burn with shame, but she kept her voice steady. "I submitted my application honestly, Ma. That's all I did. Honestly." Mrs. Beatrix laughed harshly. "Let's see how honest you are when they interview you and discover the truth." The truth always comes out. Only 2 people defended her in those dark days. Brother Samuel told anyone who would listen, "I've watched that girl for years. She submitted her application honestly at dawn, by herself. I saw her. Her interview slot is earned, and you people should be ashamed of yourselves." And Mom and Ketchy, whose gnarled fingers made every task painful, spoke up whenever the gossip started. "You people see her poverty but not her character. You see her worn clothes but not her work ethic. You see an orphan, but God sees a daughter. Shame on all of you." On the morning of her interview, Miriam stood in front of her small, cracked mirror. She wore her only decent outfit, a simple dress, clean but worn, 5 years old with a small patch on the hem she'd sewn herself. Her reflection showed a young woman who'd been beaten down but refused to stay down. She took a deep breath, whispered a prayer her mother had taught her, and walked out. Behind her, she heard Mrs. Gladys mutter loud enough to be heard. "Don't come back. I mean it." Ahead, the community center loomed like a mountain she had to climb. Inside that building, her entire future waited to be decided. The interview room felt designed to intimidate. A long table dominated the space, positioned like a barrier between judges and judged. 3 chairs sat on one side like thrones of power. Harsh fluorescent lighting cast everything in stark, unflattering relief. In the center sat a man in an expensive suit that fit him perfectly, silver-haired and distinguished, radiating the quiet authority that comes from real power. Miriam stopped breathing when she saw him. The room tilted sickeningly. It was him. The old man from the market. The customer who bought plantains every day. The gentle questioner who'd listened to her dreams. But not old, just wise, just patient. Not poor. The clothes had been a costume, a disguise. The simple shirts and patched trousers had hidden the truth. The daily visits, the gentle questions, the thoughtful conversations, all of it had been a test. Gabriel Adeyemi had been watching her all along. Her shock must have shown clearly because Gabriel smiled slightly, almost apologetically. "Please, sit down, Miriam. Don't be nervous." She sat, legs trembling so badly she feared they might give out, mind racing through every conversation they'd had. Every word she'd spoken, every opinion she'd carelessly shared. He'd known who he was the whole time. Had she been judged already? Had she failed some invisible test? "Relax," Gabriel said gently. "You're not in trouble. We just want to talk. There are no wrong answers here, only honest ones." But David clearly had different ideas. He leaned forward aggressively. "Miss Adelana, your application shows no formal business education whatsoever. You didn't complete university. You didn't even apply. You've been running a street cart for 5 years with minimal growth. Your sales records, while honest, show profits most would consider insignificant. What makes you think you're qualified for this mentorship?" The questions hit like stones, each designed to expose her inadequacy. Miriam felt the familiar shame trying to rise, the shame of being less than, of not measuring up. But then she remembered her father's words. "Your worth isn't determined by what you lack, Miriam. It's determined by what you do with what you have." She straightened her spine and met David's gaze steadily. "You're right, sir. I don't have formal education or impressive credentials. I don't have a degree or a certificate from a prestigious institution. But I have 5 years of real business experience. Not theoretical knowledge from textbooks, but actual practice in the marketplace. I know what it's like to start with absolutely nothing. I know how to stretch every naira, how to serve customers with dignity even when they don't deserve kindness, how to maintain integrity when no one's watching and it would be easier to cheat. Those aren't lessons you learn in a classroom. Those are lessons you learn in the fire, when failure means going hungry." "Your proposal mentions hiring struggling youth," Linda interjected smoothly. "That's admirable, certainly noble. But it's also potentially unprofitable. Inexperienced workers require extensive training, constant supervision, enormous patience. They make mistakes that cost money. Why would you deliberately take that risk?" "Because profit without purpose is empty," Miriam replied, voice growing stronger. "I've been that struggling youth. I know what one chance can mean to someone's entire trajectory. Yes, it's risky. Yes, it will be less efficient at first. But it's also an investment in human potential. And people who've been given a real chance, who've experienced genuine mercy, those people often work harder than those who've never struggled. They understand the value of the opportunity. They don't take it for granted." David scoffed. "That's idealistic. Business isn't about charity. It's about results, about numbers, about return on investment." "I disagree respectfully, sir," Miriam said calmly but firmly. "Business is about creating value, real value that improves lives. And creating value in people's lives, giving them skills and hope, that's the highest form of business. My father used to say that a society is judged not by how it treats its successful people, but by how it treats those who are struggling. The other candidates have impressive proposals written by professionals, backed by market research, David continued, clearly trying to rattle her. Complex spreadsheets, detailed analysis, professional formatting. You submitted handwritten pages on plain paper. How can we take you seriously? Miriam took a careful breath. Because those pages are mine, sir. Every single word, every calculation, every dream came from my own heart and mind. Not from a consultant I paid. Not from a friend who felt sorry for me. When you invest in me, if you choose to, you'll know exactly who you're getting. No pretense. No facade. Just me, with all my limitations and all my potential. Those handwritten pages might not be fancy, but they're genuine. And I'd rather present an honest plan that truly belongs to me than a beautiful lie dressed up in impressive language. The room went completely silent. Linda made a note, pen moving quickly. David sat back, looking less certain of his skepticism. For the first time since the interview began, Gabriel spoke in his own voice. His voice was gentle, but his eyes were intense, penetrating. Miriam, one question. Just one. But it's the most important. If you received this funding and became successful, what would you do for the people in this village who've mocked you? The ones spreading terrible rumors right now? What would you do for them if you had the power? The room went still, the question hanging in the air. This was the question that truly mattered. Miriam took a breath, and in her mind she saw them all. Regina's cruel words, Patricia's gossip, Mrs. Gladys's rejection, Mrs. Beatrix's public humiliation. I would offer them jobs, she said finally, voice steady and absolutely certain. Not out of revenge, not to humiliate them or show them what they lost, but because hurt people hurt others. They mock me because they're insecure, afraid, trapped in their own limitations. If I become successful and turn bitter, I just continue the cycle. The hurt keeps spreading. But if I break that cycle, if I show them there's another way, that success doesn't require cruelty, that strength can coexist with kindness, maybe something changes. Maybe not just for me, but for all of us. Maybe their children learn a different way. Gabriel leaned back in his chair, something like deep satisfaction crossing his face. Linda made another note, this time circling something and adding stars. Even David looked impressed despite himself. Thank you, Miriam, Gabriel said softly. We'll be in touch very soon. As she left the room, legs still shaking, she didn't see Gabriel turn to David and say with certainty, that is exactly what we've been looking for. She didn't hear Linda add, her character is completely consistent with everything we've observed. She didn't know that the decision had already been made in Gabriel's heart. 3 days passed with no word. Then 4. Then a full week of silence. The village grew increasingly restless, anticipation curdling into frustration. What's taking so long? People muttered. He should have decided by now. Maybe he's reconsidering. Maybe this was all just a show. In the hotel suite where Gabriel was staying, tensions ran high. David paced like a caged animal, his expensive shoes wearing a path in the carpet. Linda reviewed reports at the desk, laptop open, files organized with obsessive precision. Gabriel stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, looking out at the village he'd left 30 years ago. Uncle, I genuinely don't understand the delay anymore, David said, frustration evident. We've interviewed everyone, twice in some cases. We've reviewed applications until I can recite them. Miriam clearly has character, yes, I'll admit that after her interview. But Regina has a solid, professionally written plan. Patricia has connections throughout the region. Susan has actual capital to invest. They're safer bets in every practical sense. Why are we still deliberating? Gabriel turned slowly from the window. His face was serious, carrying an expression David had never seen before, something that mixed pain with purpose. Sit down, David. Both of you. There's something I haven't told you about why I really came back to this village. David and Linda exchanged glances. In all their time working with Gabriel, 5 years for Linda, a lifetime for David, they'd never heard this tone. Gabriel moved to the table, pulling out a chair but not sitting, standing behind it with hands gripping the back. When he spoke, his voice carried decades of buried emotion. 30 years ago, I was exactly like Miriam. Not similar, identical in every way that matters. An orphan with no family support. Poor in a way that's hard to explain, not just lack of luxury, but genuine deprivation. Going to bed hungry more nights than not. Wearing clothes held together with safety pins. Mocked by everyone in this village. I lived with my uncle who treated me like an unpaid servant. Made me sleep on the floor even when there were empty beds. I wore the same clothes to school until they literally fell apart. The people of this village, the same families who are here now, they laughed at me. Called me worthless to my face. Told me I'd never amount to anything. Linda's pen had frozen mid-note. Her mouth had fallen slightly open. She'd managed his life for 5 years and never knew this. David's eyes had widened in shock. I left for Lagos with nothing, Gabriel continued, voice thick with memory. 20 naira in my pocket. A borrowed shirt. And rage in my heart. Burning, consuming rage. I slept in my first office because I couldn't afford both office and apartment. I ate 1 meal a day, sometimes less. I worked 20-hour days, 7 days a week, driven by fury. Every business success felt like revenge. Every naira I earned was proof they'd been wrong. I wanted to prove them wrong so badly it consumed me. He paused, jaw clenched. And when I finally became wealthy, when I'd built my empire and had more money than I dreamed possible, you know what I realized? That anger had poisoned me from the inside. I'd succeeded, yes. Made more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. But I'd lost something essential. Compassion. The ability to see people as people. I'd become exactly like the people I hated, just with more money. He pulled out a folder of photographs, spreading them across the table. This is why we're taking our time. My team has been watching everyone, not just during interviews, but in daily life. How they treat people they think are beneath them. The photos showed a devastating chronicle. Regina overcharging an elderly woman. Patricia throwing away food rather than giving it to a hungry child. Susan bribing security. Mrs. Beatrix humiliating Miriam. Mrs. Gladys treating Miriam like a slave. And here, Gabriel said, his voice softening as he spread out another set. Miriam giving exact change. Miriam sharing her lunch with a street child. Miriam helping Mama Nkechi. Miriam teaching a young girl to read for free. I came back to test this village, Gabriel said quietly. To see if 30 years had changed anything. To see if people could recognize true potential when it wasn't wrapped in fine clothing. He paused. They haven't changed at all. Still judging by appearances. But I also found Miriam. And Mama Nkechi. And Brother Samuel. People who understand what really matters. That's why we're taking our time. Because this decision isn't just about funding a business. It's about showing this village what they've been blind to. Linda closed the folder, moved by what she'd heard. So when do we make the announcement? Gabriel checked his watch and smiled. Not his business smile, but something deeper. Tomorrow. At noon. It's time this village learned that true wealth isn't found in bank accounts. It's found in character. Outside, the sun was setting over Ife. Across town, Miriam sat on Mrs. Gladys's steps, wondering if she should pack her few belongings. She'd been locked out again. But she didn't know that by this time tomorrow, everything would change. The entire village gathered at the community center at noon. The room was absolutely packed beyond capacity. Every seat taken, people standing pressed against walls, children perched on parents' shoulders, late arrivers crowding doorways and windows, everyone craning necks to see the stage. Regina sat in the very front row, makeup applied with professional precision. Her dress so expensive it had probably cost more than most families spent on food in a month. Patricia and Susan flanked her like bodyguards, equally polished. Joy and Mrs. Gladys sat nearby, both wearing brand new outfits. Certain Joy's name would be called. Miriam sat in the very back corner near Mom and Ketchy, who'd saved her a seat. She'd spent the previous night sleeping under a mango tree after Mrs. Gladys had locked her out completely. Her dress was the same worn one, clean but visibly mended. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. But despite everything, her head was held high. At exactly noon, Gabriel Adeyemi entered through the side door. The room fell into absolute silence, so complete you could have heard a pin drop. He walked to the podium with measured steps, David and Linda following behind. He surveyed the crowd slowly, his expression completely unreadable. "Thank you all for coming today," he began, his voice calm and authoritative. "Over the past weeks, I've learned a great deal about this village, about its people, about what you value." He paused deliberately. 30 years ago, I left this place as an orphan, poor, mocked by everyone, rejected by people who should have helped me. You told me I'd never amount to anything. Shock rippled through the assembled villagers like an electric current. Some of the older villagers shifted uncomfortably, memories stirring, faces flushing with shame. "I came back not just to build a factory or create jobs," Gabriel continued. "I came back to test something. To see if this village had learned anything in 30 years. To see if you could look past appearances and recognize true value." He held up a remote control and clicked. The screen behind him blazed to life with photos. The surveillance images. The crowd gasped collectively as they saw themselves in moments they thought were private. Regina overcharging customers. Patricia's cruelty. Susan's manipulation. Mrs. Beatrix's public shaming. "I've been watching everything," Gabriel said quietly, but his quiet voice somehow carried more power than shouting. "Not just your applications, not just your interviews, but your character when you thought no one important could see. How you treat people who can't benefit you." He clicked to the next set of images. "And I found something precious. I found genuine kindness. Unwavering honesty. True integrity." The photos showed Miriam's acts of compassion, her precision with change, her generosity, her teaching. The room turned as one to stare at Miriam. "I also spent time in disguise," Gabriel said. "One person treated me with genuine kindness when I appeared to be just a poor old man. One person showed wisdom and character in every single interaction." He looked directly at Miriam across the crowded room. "Miriam Adele Anna, please stand up." Miriam stood on trembling legs, Mom and Ketchy squeezing her hand for support. Every eye in the entire room was on her. "Miriam Adele Anna," Gabriel said, his voice ringing with authority, "you are the recipient of my full mentorship package. You will receive 5 million naira in business funding to start your restaurant. You will receive complete business training from my best instructors. You will receive personal mentorship directly from me. Additionally, I will sponsor your complete university education, tuition, books, accommodation, living expenses, everything." The room erupted into chaos, some applauding wildly, many more sitting in shocked silence. Regina's mouth fell open. Patricia looked faint. Susan's composure shattered. Joy burst into tears. Mrs. Gladys sat frozen, her face cycling through disbelief and rage. Mrs. Gladys suddenly stood, voice loud and desperate. "Mr. Adeyemi, sir, please. I raised that girl. I took her into my home. Her success is because of my care." Gabriel held up one hand, cutting her off with quiet authority. "Madam, I have detailed recordings of exactly how you treated Miriam. Shall I play them for the entire village?" Mrs. Gladys sat down so abruptly it looked like her legs had been cut out from under her. "Adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it," Gabriel continued, addressing the whole room. "Miriam's character was built by her parents and strengthened by her own choices. Your treatment revealed your character, not hers. He paused. I'm also awarding smaller grants to Mom and Ketchy and Brother Samuel, others who showed consistent kindness. Mom and Ketchy gasped, tears streaming freely down her weathered face. This village has a choice now, Gabriel said, his voice softening but remaining firm. You can continue judging by appearances, continue mocking those you consider beneath you, continue valuing wealth over character. Or you can learn from this moment. You can change. True value isn't worn on the body, it lives in the heart. As people began to disperse, some trying to crowd around Miriam, others slinking away in shame, Miriam saw Mrs. Gladys standing alone near the door, isolated. Their eyes met across the room. Then, slowly, deliberately, Miriam walked over. Aunt Gladys, she said quietly, when my restaurant opens, there will be a job for Joy if she wants it. And I'd like to pay for her education too, the same opportunity Mr. Adeyemi is giving me. Not because I have to, not because you were kind to me, but because I choose to. Because I refuse to become bitter. Mrs. Gladys stared at her, something cracking visibly in her hardened expression, tears forming in eyes that had been dry and cold for years. Why? She whispered, voice breaking. After everything I did to you? Because forgiveness is stronger than revenge, Miriam said simply. And because I refuse to let your cruelty turn me into someone cruel. Gabriel, watching from across the room with David and Linda beside him, smiled, a real smile of satisfaction and hope. He'd chosen correctly. Not just a business partner, but someone who understood what true wealth really meant. That evening, as the sun set over Ife in brilliant colors, Miriam stood at her old market spot one last time, touching the worn wooden cart that had been her workplace for 5 years. Tomorrow her new life would begin. University classes, business training, opportunities beyond anything she'd let herself dream. But she wouldn't forget this place, these struggles, these lessons learned in poverty and pain. The village would never look at the orphan girl the same way again. And they'd never forget that true value lies not in what we wear or own, but in who we are when no one's watching. If Miriam's story moved you, there are countless others like her waiting to be heard. Subscribe to Folktales by Inaya and join us in celebrating the resilience of the human spirit. Because every story we share might just change how someone sees the world, or themselves.